Okay, good morning to all of you out there. You seem to have caught me off guard this morning because I was just very busy doing my notes because there's a lot of stuff going on and I need to make sure we don't miss many of it. In any case, just to share this morning, I got out of bed struggling. Struggling, I guess, you come to this point in life, your age, and you spend an entire day working physically and you will wake up sore. But on the other hand, I can't complain because I am not one of those who walked 4 hours. I am not one of those who stood under the sun for several hours. I am not one of those who had to sleep in odd places because they couldn't find a ride back home. We're going to tackle that today. But before any of that, we will also tackle the concern regarding this new bill that's being processed in Congress, the Anti-Terrorism Bill, and why a lot of people seem to be concerned about it. It's not quite out there in the airspace of media. Not a lot of people seem to be talking about it as far as talk show hosts go. But privately, especially among students, there's been quite a discussion online regarding this new anti-terrorism bill. We'll speak to the primary author of that, and we will tackle other topics this morning. In the meantime, let's go to the headlines on the front page of the Philippine Star. Thousands of commuters, mostly workers returning to their jobs, were stranded yesterday in Metro Manila as public transport remained limited in the first day of the shift to General Community Quarantine, or GCQ. As the situation in the streets became more desperate, several government agencies, including the Philippine National Police and the Philippine Coast Guard, deployed trucks to pick up stranded commuters. The military also deployed 48 trucks, according to Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana. He said the deployment will continue until the Transportation Department can field sufficient transport. Only rail lines, bus augmentation units, taxis, transport network vehicle services, or TNVS, shuttle services, point-to-point buses, and bicycles are to ferry commuters at this time. In an interview, Transport Secretary Arthur Tugade felt sorry for the struggles of the commuters, but he also said that they did not promise them convenience. We'll talk with our correspondent Gerard de la Peña to know more about the stories from the commuters in the first day of GCQ. Meanwhile, the palace warns again that if they see the need, they may reimpose the stricter Enhanced Community Quarantine, or ECQ. Presidential spokesman Harry Roque explained if health protocols like social distancing will not be observed, they may have to again revert to ECQ or modified ECQ. Right now, all areas in the country are under GCQ or modified GCQ. Officials have repeatedly advised the public to not be complacent as the virus is still a present threat and that easing of restrictions is only done to reopen the economy. Meanwhile, the health department is claiming a small victory against the COVID-19 pandemic, which is based on three factors. Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere explains that, number one, it is the drop in the case fatality rates or the number of deaths. Number two, the case doubling time or the rate at which the number of cases double continues to get longer. And three, the number of severe cases being treated in hospitals is going down and that the healthcare system still has the capacity to handle them. The number of COVID-19 cases in the Philippines stands at over 18,600 with 960 deaths recorded. Finally, the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation denies the allegation of the Private Hospitals and Associations of the Philippines, or PHAPI, that around 300 hospitals are facing closure due to delayed PhilHealth payments. In a statement, the state insurer said that the PHAPI's allegations are unfounded, malicious, and irresponsible. PhilHealth explained that from January to May 29, they have disbursed over 52 billion pesos in claims payment and interim reimbursement mechanism, or IRM, to healthcare facilities. So there you go. That's most of the news today. And for those of you who are wondering what it was like yesterday, just need to share this with all of you. That was a common sight around Metro Manila and some provinces, because there were no buses, not enough seats on the trains, etc. In fact, I think it was GMA 7 that featured the story of a woman who literally had to walk 3 hours to get to, waited 3 hours to get on board a PNR train and then walked another hour. Okay, let's go to our first interview. And our first interview is a party list representative of Puwersa ng Bayaning Atleta. And he is the author, or one of the primary authors, of the Anti-Terrorism Bill, Congressman Jericho Nograles. Jericho, welcome to the show once again.
Thank you for having me back, Cito. It's a good opportunity to explain the salient points of this bill.
Okay, sorry I can't play nice this morning because there are very concerned citizens out there. First and foremost, many people are wondering, why now? We have so many problems, we have so many concerns. We are literally fighting for our survival, and suddenly this anti-terrorism bill is sent to Congress by the executive department saying this is urgent. They didn't send it, they certified it as urgent. And so people are like, ano yan? Is this another ploy to distract us from COVID-19? Is there a darker motive? Please respond, Jericho.
Well, I'm glad you asked that very basic question. First of all, it is not a new concept, because what we've had since 2007 is what you call the Human Security Act, or our Anti-Terrorism Bill. And for the past 7 years, there have been bills filed in Congress and acted upon in Congress to amend this bill. And this bill actually takes into consideration all the 7 years of debate. In the current Congress, this has already passed in third reading in the Senate. And as far as the House of Representatives is concerned, the House of Representatives took more time deliberating and polishing this bill. And in fact, we have had 5 public consultations even prior to the ECQ, that we have been talking to different parts, and this has been polished. The original bills that were filed as this Congress started, and the bills that has been approved, the consolidated bill that has been approved in the committee level and will probably be tackled in the House of Representatives in plenary today, has been polished. Imagine, even previously, just as a simple example, in the previous bills in the last 7 years, and the proposals in the last 7 years, did not even take into consideration humanitarian aid, even for terrorists and known terrorist individuals and groups. And this bill even takes that into consideration. I think the proper way of looking at this measure is that, and I think I'm calling it as it is an amendment and a polished polishing of an existing law, which is the Human Security Act of 2007. That's it. It's really a
Okay.
polishing and making it more up to date to the how should I put it? The evolution of terrorism around the world.
Okay. I think what makes it suspect, if I may use the word, is the fact that the president certified it as urgent. In contrast to the many statements of the president himself and the armed forces of the Philippines, that the NPA is just a minuscule entity. The Abu Sayyaf is down to maybe 300 at most, and there are no legitimate threats to the security of the nation. So it's like, kung wala naman talaga tayong kalaban na matindi, why certify the bill as urgent?
There are two reasons for that. The primary reason would be um, we have to to correctly look at the security problem of our nation. While the forces are small, we don't have enough legislation or legal backing to stop these forces. I mean, yeah, maliit na lang sila or kumukonti na lang sila, but at the same time, nandyan pa rin sila. May kulang pa. We cannot eradicate them with our existing laws. In fact, the Human Security Act of 2007 was used twice, just twice in 13 years against terrorists because
Mhm.
it's practically inutile. And because it is inutile, we need to polish it to make it effective. The secondary the secondary reason, and I think this is the reason why there is an immediacy to passing this, is there is a requirement from the UN and International Monetary Fund that we need to pass certain provisions in this bill within the next few weeks, or we risk being gray listed. And the
May,
moment that we get gray listed in the financial world, that means lahat po ng mga remittance ng ating mga OFW isuscrutinize na yan. And mas
okay.
mabagal ang remittance na yan. Trade will be inhibited. And again, because of that remittance, lahat ng pera galing sa Pilipinas will be considered as gray, not clean. So automatically sabihin nila, oh, galing Pilipinas yan, delikado yan, mabagal yan. And it will impact our economy and our trade when we don't want any lessening of trade between our nation and the world. That is
Okay.
the urgency. That
Yeah.
is,
Jericho, may we know exactly what those provisions are that are being required by United Nations and by the, did I hear you correctly, the World Bank?
the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund. Um, these provisions actually are within the money transfer provisions here in our bill. So these
Okay.
bills are one of the requirements, and this has been the reason why the Senate also fast-tracked it under this Congress. Dito sa House, we accepted those provisions. In fact, there is no debate under those provisions. The biggest problem that we have in the debate is whether the definitions are too broad or too narrow, or
Yeah,
how to
but
balance these
what
provisions.
in particular are the provisions required by the financial institutions and the United Nations regarding
Well,
the money
one
transfer?
of them is the foreign terrorist funding. Our
Mhm.
original, our existing law, the Human Security Act of 2007, does not have any provision against foreign terrorist funding. So you can imagine a foreign terrorist operating within our country, which happens, by the way, and
Mhm.
funding other terrorists in the region or even in other continents. That's one of the basic provisions na kailangan. Our
Mhm.
Human Security Act of 2007 does not even consider what a foreign terrorist is. It does not even consider terrorism that is conducted within the Philippines, but the target is outside of the Philippines. And
Mhm.
these kinds of things are the ones that the world wants to stop. And that is exactly one of the main provisions why the executive and the legislative want to fast track this, if I could use that term. But I think regardless of all of that, of foreign need and everything, I think our country really needs this.
Mhm. Okay, now the next question would be: okay, you said that essentially you are simply polishing, refining, and improving the Security Act. Now, what refinements or improvements did the legislature introduce?
Well, basically, one of the major reasons why the Human Security Act of 2007 was rendered inutile is because there is a punishment provision there for law enforcers that any detention or wrongful detention, the law enforcers will be charged 500,000 pesos per day of detention.
Mhm.
Now, this is one of the major reasons upon the feedback of the AFP and the PNP that they don't even use this. So in order for them to catch the terrorists, what they use is they say that they have done illegal possession of firearms or explosives, among
Yeah.
others. So
Mhm.
what we've did is we've done away with that. However, in order to maintain the safety of our citizens, because I myself, I don't want to be a victim of abuse of wrongful use of this bill, we put in other punishment provisions. Like any officer or any organization of government that will abuse this, they face 10 years imprisonment. And aside from that, the determination of whether a person should be surveilled or the determination that that person should be considered a terrorist, there is participation, and a heavy participation for that matter, on the part of the judiciary. So it isn't a one-sided determination. It isn't just the executive saying, "O yan, terrorista yan, kailangan i-surveillance yan." No, that cannot happen. There is this shared power where the judiciary, and in fact it is the court of appeals that would say, okay, you can surveil that group, okay, you can surveil that individual. And as another safety measure on this bill and abuse from authority is that if you think that you are being surveilled and wrongfully surveilled, you can go to the regional trial court and demand writ of habeas data or even the writ of amparo to
Mhm.
ask them, hey, government, why are you surveilling me? And that is something that the court cannot deny as well. So
Mhm.
there are these balancing provisions there. What I do notice though nowadays is that the information that is being spread around about the bill is how shall I put it? A little exaggerated, perhaps,
Okay. Why
but
so?
I do understand the concern. The context of the presentation of the data there is a little wrong. So a lot of people are saying na, oh, abusuhin ito dahil ECQ, abusuhin ito dahil ganyan. No, no, no. The terrorism problem is apples and oranges when it comes to ECQ and it comes to politics. This is a national security problem, and not just a national security problem. It is also a regional problem. May I give another example, Alex?
Before you do, Jericho, can you please clarify this? Because before we went on air, I did mention to Congressman Nograles, ladies and gentlemen, that there are a lot of students who reached out because apparently they took interest in this matter. And one of the things that was highlighted was people can be held for 14 days before being delivered to the proper judicial authorities. And that's under Section 29. And it can be extended by 10 days if necessary to preserve evidence, prevent another terror act, investigation is being conducted, etc. In other words, you could be detained for quite a long time before anyone even knows that you got grabbed by the authorities.
That's inaccurate. Again, as I
Okay,
said,
that's
that's
right.
pretty
Yeah.
inaccurate. Thank you for asking that. I'm glad you asked that. How it's supposed to happen is this. When an officer detains an individual for suspicion of terrorism, such officer is responsible to go to the nearest judge, the nearest RTC judge, to justify his detainment of that person, and not just to justify it and present evidence on why they have to detain that person, they also have to inform the court, number one, why they have to detain him. Number two, how long they think they have to detain him, whether it's the maximum or just a few days, or if they think they're going to extend it. Number three, where are they going to detain him? So hindi na pwede yung patago. Tulad ng araw, yung mga desaparecido, mga natuluyan na. And marami akong kilala na mga desaparecido. Ang pang-apat, very important, is the state of health of the individual as well as the mental state of that individual upon the detention. And they have to justify it continuously. And here is the safeguard. If he cannot, the law enforcer cannot justify his detention, that law enforcement agent can go to prison immediately, forfeit everything, and push na lahat ang ginagawa dyan. Those are the safeguards. Kasi ayoko. Kung ako maging biktima doon, pati matakot ako. So the way that I approach this bill is I keep my open ears, but at the same time, we need to be very fair and very secure in ourselves.
Oh, okay. I don't have the specifics of your bill, but I do know that there are definitions of terrorists and terroristic association or association with terrorist groups. Now, let me ask you a specific example. Jose Maria Sison is based in the Netherlands. He represents the NPA, CCP, etc. Now, with this new bill, can he now be labeled as a terrorist? Will this new bill allow the government the power to deny him access to the Philippines or have him repatriated to the Philippines?
It depends on what he says and what he does. If what he says or what he does engages in the acts intended to cause death or serious bodily injury to any person, to cause destruction of government property or public facilities, if he wants to interfere with the operation of critical infrastructure or he incites such interference of critical infrastructure, if he develops, manufactures, supplies biological weapons, if he releases toxic substances or causes the release of toxic substances, explosives, etc. in the Philippines, among others. So, I mean, these are very specific.
I know. But
that we know about
my point, Jericho, is this. Okay, all in other parts of the world, mere association or membership or allegiance to the ISIS, which is a globally branded terrorist group, will earn you detention, arrest, confinement, interrogation. Will the new anti-terror bill also provide for that? Because I'm not going to challenge what you're trying to do.
For a non-terrorist organization that is very clear and specific that they want to harm our country or use our country to harm another person, individual, or group from outside of our country, then the association of that person and his overt actions will be subject to this bill. And so the government can either detain, deny entry, or penalize him for the acts of terrorism.
Now, what about the indirect relationships? Because I remember back in the 90s, I had received information about an individual coming from the Middle East who had brought in millions of dollars to put up schools in
I remember
the
that.
south, in Mindanao. Okay,
I
you know
remember.
that. Okay, and that individual came in under the cloak of Islamization, but turned
Mhm.
out to be a terrorist. Now, what happens to guys like that? Does this new bill give the power to filter, screen, etc., and detain or I don't know, confiscate their properties, etc.?
To continue your story, that guy was actually successful in his plan in executing it within the
Mhm.
Philippines. That
Yeah.
just to put it into context. And there were no adequate laws back then to stop him from doing so. If this bill gets passed into law, the way I imagine how this bill will be utilized is that first the government or the security forces will apply with the commission with the court of appeals to survey the person. Once that they survey the person and then they get adequate evidence for the person that this was his purpose, then he can be arrested under this bill. So the idea is that this bill is supposed to prevent terrorism, and it adequately gives the mechanisms to government and security forces to utilize it against terrorists. The big question is civil liberties. People
Mm.
are thinking, what if this will be abused against Filipinos? Then my simple answer is that um, they cannot be surveyed if the Court of Appeals will not allow them to. Ang habol kasi natin is that there's a line between the rule of law and the rule by law. And the
Uh-huh.
law that this espouses is that we need to be secure, and at the same time our rights should be protected. I mean, that's the whole point. The whole point is that this bill should be utilized to protect our rights and not to abuse our rights.
Okay, then how do we protect students, organizations in the universities, etc.? Because let's face it, there's this issue of red tagging. There's this issue of certain intelligence people or law enforcers being too creative in their campaign against enemies of the state to the point that they actually stimulate or simulate the anti-government activities to the point that may red tagging, and then from red tagging, how far are we from uh, terrorist tagging?
Well, there's, like I said, we have to believe in the safeguards here. We have to believe that these law enforcers should be afraid of abusing this law or this bill if it's passed into law. And that
Mhm.
is these safeguards are something that I myself defend. Like, I believe that any person, any government agency who will abuse this, gusto ko talagang mapreso yan.
Does
So
the anti
I don't like, I believe that in the freedom of speech. I do. But there is a limit in inciting for violence. Do not.
Okay, fine.
That's where we draw the line.
We're all agreed on that. Now, my final question is there a group, an independent group, or a inside group in government that will see to it, like an internal affairs sort of group that will see to it that this law is not abused?
I think you've got yourself the
No, no. Does the bill provide for such? Because it's a very powerful bill, Jericho. And the scary part there is it's like giving someone a loaded gun without anyone overseeing them.
well, the general oversight of Congress is here.
Hmm.
It automatically applies. So the general oversight of Congress of any abuse here. At the same time, the courts are operating on this one. At any
Hmm.
time, the court can stop the activity of the executive, and at any time, Congress can also demand such things. So
Okay.
our normal checks and balances would apply
Okay.
under
Well. Okay.
circumstances.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Jericho. And I hope that you stay safe, stay strong, and stay healthy. And I really mean that. And you stay indoors for as much as you can because coronavirus is still out there. You have a good day and God bless you.
Thank you, Cito, and God bless the Philippines.
Okay, that's Congressman Jericho Nograles of the Puwersa ng Bayaning Atleta PBA Party-list. And he is one of the principal authors, actually the principal author, I think, of this refined, enhanced anti-terrorism bill that is now being fast-tracked in Congress because it has been certified by the president as urgent. Now, it's just really interesting. We will get the opposition side or the side of those who are always under the microscope when it comes to all of these security issues. We will be interviewing former Congressman Neri Colmenares, and we'll go for a quick break first, and we'll do that right after. Okay, we're back here on Agenda. I'm Cito Beltran, and you are watching us via Signal TV, channels 8 and 250, as well as the Facebook platform of One News PH and YouTube. And we would just like to request all our viewers, particularly on Facebook, to please share the show with others so that we can send out more information out there beyond COVID-19, beyond the virus, because there is a need for people to start thinking of other concerns and not be caught by surprise. In any case, we have with us former Congressman Neri Colmenares, who is now the chairman of Bayan Muna. I hope I got that right. To discuss with us the features and their concerns regarding House Bill 6875. Good morning, Neri. How are you?
I'm fine, Cito. Good morning. Good morning to your viewers also. Thank you.
Okay. Are you also confined to quarters?
Yes, if you notice, I'm inside my room and I don't really go out unless very necessary. So yeah.
Okay, but how are you keeping yourself busy and in touch? Because it must be hard. I mean, like today we're going to be interviewing you about the House Bill 6875. But how are you managing work from home given
Yes. Well,
the confinement?
yes, we have to depend, of course, online. So it's via email, Viber, or StreamYard, or things like this, or Zoom. That's how we keep up now. So, but we still we follow the issues because, well, we believe that despite the pandemic, the checks and balance must continue and the feedback mechanism must continue so that at least we can contribute to the, to the safety of the public. And one of these issues, of course, that we're tackling is this anti-terrorism bill, which was passed by the committee very, very recently.
Okay, now what are your concerns about this? Because as I mentioned to Jericho Nograles, a lot of students actually sent word that they're worried about it. They're wondering why the anti-terrorism bill, when the AFP has been saying, oh, the NPA, konti na lang yan, yung Abu Sayyaf will practically wipe them out. Parang the words does not match the deed.
Yes, well, actually, the concerns, there are three issues of concerns here. The fact, the first one is it's unconstitutional. There are many provisions that are unconstitutional. The second is it could be used by President Duterte to go after dissenters and critics. And
Mhm.
thirdly, we're in the midst of pandemic, you could have focused on many bills that respond to the health crisis, but you would rather pass by haste a law that has no relations at all with the COVID pandemic. So those are our critiques. No? So basically, if I may continue, why did
Yeah.
I say it's unconstitutional? For example, and I could read, this is not exaggerated, I could read the actual provision here. For example, Section 29, it says that upon the authorization of the Anti-Terrorism Council, which is, of course, President Duterte's count, I call it junta because he appoints, or it's an executive thing. Upon the authorization of the Anti-Terrorism Council, a police or a military may arrest a suspect for 14 days at least, extendable by another 10 days, without judicial, warrant. So, is it a violation of the Constitution? Yes, Article 18. Article 7, Section 18, which says that if the writ of habeas corpus is suspended, they should charge anyone arrested for 3 days. And if they cannot file a case against the that person must be released. So in the Constitution, if the writ is suspended, the maximum number of days you can be detained is 3 days. If the writ
Mhm.
is not suspended, currently you have 12 hours, 18 hours, 36 hours, right?
Yeah.
So why should a law extend the period of detention, which is limited by the Constitution? So in my opinion, that's unconstitutional. Secondly, why should the ATC be granted the judicial power to issue warrants? Because they term it as authorized by the ATC, the Anti-Terrorism Council, but that's practically a warrant of arrest. So that's one, you know. And
Mm.
secondly, prescription. I heard Congressman Nograles a while ago about prescription should go to courts, but he was pointing at Section 26. What he did not mention was Section 25, which says that the ATC, the Anti-Terrorism Council, can designate an organization as a terrorist organization, and that's it. You're designated. You don't even have to go to court. And corresponding to that, there could be arrests of your members just because the ATC, called you a terrorist.
There
So,
is no there are no prescribed process requirements before the Anti-Terrorism Council can label an organization as a terrorist organization. Is that correct?
yes, actually, they can say, well, we have probable cause to believe, etc. But that's their own discretion. That's the problem here. And
Mhm.
knowing the track record of President Duterte, he has this penchant, should we say, of labeling everybody a communist or a terrorist and so on. And in fact, we have a lot of experiences where people were charged with various laws. Senators or activists or, in fact, ordinary people were even charged with various crimes for merely not having a quarantine pass. So that's the problem there. And the assertion of our colleagues in the House that, oh, no, 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 if you're arrested for 14 days, you need to inform the judge. Yes, but that's not the case. It's just an information on the judge. The provision is very clear, and I can read that. It
Go
says,
ahead.
on the authorization, I can read that. It says here, Section 29, upon the authorization of the ATC, I'll look for it. Huh? Upon the here it is. Any law enforcement or military personnel, Section 29, who have been duly authorized in writing by the Anti-Terrorism Council has taken custody of a person suspected of committing any act defined and penalized under this act shall, without incurring criminal liability for delay, wala silang sagutin, in the delivery of the detained person to the proper judicial authorities, deliver said suspects to the proper judicial authority within a period of 14 calendar days. Meaning to say, they can detain you for 14 days. They will not incur any liability. So that is a violation of the Constitution. Why would you arrest me if you? Why will you not charge me in court? I mean, if I'm arrested, Cito, charge me in court. 12 hours, 18 hours, 36 hours. If the writ is suspended, so charge me within 3 days. Oh, but we're still gathering evidence. Oh, it's your problem. Why should you arrest me if you haven't gathered evidence? I mean, that's really a violation. So it's not exaggerated because the law says it, and the continuation is, but he or she, the authority, the police, will inform the judge. But it's just inform. Oh, judge, by the way, we arrested this person. It's not a charge where you can submit your evidence to defend yourself. So that's basically the problem there.
So somebody can grab you, can grab Neri Colmenares or Cito Beltran, not inform our family members, and take us into custody for 14 days, and all they have to do is go to the nearest judge and, oh, by the way, we detained Colmenares and Beltran.
Yes, and the judge has no power because there's no case before the judge. The judge has no jurisdiction. He was just FYI. And the problem here, Cito, is that in the old law...
Is that correct? Neri, sorry, is that correct that if they inform a judge... I mean, I understand, that concept of it's not within my... there is no case in front of my sala, so it is not within my responsibility or jurisdiction. Pero pag sinabi na sa judge na, Judge, dinitain namin si Colmenares, isn't the judge legally or effectively informed and given a responsibility of some sort? I mean, you're the legislator and the lawyer. Oh.
There's nothing here in the law. Whatever the feelings of the judge, I should probably inquire. But legally, as you mentioned, there is no jurisdiction. There's no case filed against him. So they don't even follow orders of a judge. How much more if the judge has no jurisdiction? It's very clear here. And we are concerned because, as I mentioned a while ago, that it could be used against critics. We have always been asking that question, Cito. In fact, in one of the hearings before, I asked the authorities, the government, did the current anti-terror law fail you? That you'll have to let go a maute just because the current law is lacking in teeth or something. They said no. In fact, I said, cite me an example. Did somebody escape you? Because, I mean, if you see the maute, I mean, they'd probably shoot them. So why do you really need a law?
Okay, let me butt in there, Neri, no? And baka magalit na sa akin si Joma Season because I keep using him as an example. But that has always been the pet peeve of the military as well as many presidents. From what I recall, the government, whoever is president and whoever is in the AFP, they have been frustrated with Joma Season. They can't grab the guy. He's living comfortably in Utrecht in the Netherlands, and he is basically making the government look bad and making the NPA and the CPP look good. Do you believe that this may be a bill that's in one way intended to address that inability to get Joma Season?
Well, actually, there's no legal lacuna here, Cito. There's no gap here. The current anti-terror law empowers them that. In fact, the current anti-terror law is draconian as it is. In fact, they intervened before in Europe where they wanted Mr. Season to be declared a terrorist, and his bank accounts are frozen and
Mhm.
repatriated here, deported here. But after they filed it, then there was a court in Europe that acquitted him and said, no, you have no basis, you have no evidence, you have no proof. So I don't agree with the statements. Oh, we need this new law because we have to go after people like Joe Season. The current law is there. In fact, the story about this person who went to Mindanao,
Yeah.
supposedly to fund, rebel groups. Is there a law at the time that they could have used? Yes. Conspiracy to commit rebellion. Di ba? I mean, anyone who funds a rebel group can be charged with conspiracy. So what's the problem? But then they have this current anti-terror law. Does it empower them to arrest that person? Yes. The anti-terror law currently is draconian. Secondly, I don't agree that there is a problem with foreign funding because they actually passed the terrorist financing law. So there are two terrorism laws here, actually, Cito. There is the
Okay.
Human Security Act, which was mentioned by Congressman Nograles, but he failed to mention that Congress also passed the terrorist financing law. And when they passed it, they said, oh, well, we need to pass this because, we have to fulfill our obligations with the UN and so on. So, ang tanong ko, do you really need this law? I asked them to arrest a maute. And they said, well, yes, but actually their main problem, Sito, and they admitted this in the hearing, their main problem is the 500,000 per day penalty. So I said, well, if it's your
Mm.
problem, then we should discuss about that. But do you intend to abuse your
Their
power? They said,
problem,
no.
yeah, their problem is that they will have to pay any law enforcement officer
Yeah,
charged with illegal detention has to pay 500,000 pesos a day
per day.
per day of illegal detention.
Yes, that's why I
Okay.
asked them. So if that's your problem, that's where the amendments should focus on. But
Mm.
why do you make the definition of terrorism overbroad? Why do you increase it to 14 days detention? Why do you have a powerful junta like the Anti-Terrorism Council, proscribing people, organizations? Well, it's not your problem. The current law, you said, works, except that you have a 500,000 penalty. So if it is true that the problem here is to fulfill international obligations on financing, why do you need to touch Section 4, which is the definition of terrorism? Why do you need to have Section 29, which is 14 days? It doesn't pertain to anything about financing. So it's not exaggerated, Cito. The concern is because I can cite all the provisions here and show that I mentioned Section 29. I mentioned Section 4. So
Mm.
for me, they don't really need this law for the maute. I mean, if they see a maute and they want to raid the safe house of maute, I don't think the military will say, "Oh, the anti-terror law is not yet been
But
passed or
what?
approved." So, di ba? So, but
Yeah.
they need it for the dissenters. They
Uh,
need
Ne-
this for the critics.
Okay, Neri, what in this law convinces you that it is something that the Duterte group and Duterte supporters are going to use against their enemies?
Well, basically, I mentioned the broad definition of terrorism. Under Section 4, for example,
Mm.
serious interference with critical infrastructure. Critical infrastructure, they define it as telecommunication, information technology, etc. If
Mm.
you if you interfere, that's the term, interfere. Oh, so Anonymous, for example, interferes with the website of BNP. Maybe Anonymous can be charged with any of the laws currently pending here. But
Yeah.
then that's not a terrorist act, Cito. That's not a terrorist act. So now they can label any act of dissent as a terrorist act.
So
Secondly,
if a madre if a nun leads indigenous people, blockade the entrance to a mining firm, or blocks
Correct.
the construction of the
Yes.
of a bridge or a dam, you could actually be picked out and charged with terrorism under this bill.
Yes. In fact, even if you didn't do that, they can pick you up for 14 days. But if you did that, they can charge you with terrorism. In fact, EDSA People Power 1 Cito, or People Power 2 for that matter, is
Mhm.
considered a terrorist act under this bill because there was a serious interference with critical infrastructure. You paralyze EDSA for 4 days. Oh, that's a terrorist act. And your intention is to intimidate government. Of course, the intention was to intimidate President Marcos to depart from Malacanang. But that was people power. And now, an act which was hailed around the world as a symbol of a people's resistance to a dictatorship and courage is now considered a terrorist act under this bill. So, there are many provisions. For example, we can ask them, other than the deletion of the 500,000 penalty, there is a provision in the current anti-terror law, the Human Security Act, that this anti-terror law should be suspended 1 month before elections and 2 months after elections. Why did they delete that? Is there any relation of that provision to the financing mentioned a while ago? No, there's no relations at all. In fact, the why, it's very difficult to have that power for a president during campaign periods because you can arrest people for 14 days. In fact, I was telling the senators who approved this, you can be victims of this if you choose the wrong side in 2022. So why delete
How,
those
how
things?
how can they be victims, Neri?
For me, even if you arrest a leader of the opposition for 14 days, does not that disrupt the campaign? I mean, after 14 days, you extend it by 10 days. And then you just say, oh, sorry, we made a mistake. Okay, you're released now. But then the campaign has been disrupted. All the members of the opposition will now be cowed.
Okay. Oops. Unfortunately, we seem to have lost. Okay, there we go. Uh, in any case, I think we have had quite a lot of information from Neri Colmenares. I don't know if we're going to be. Okay, there we go. Try again.
Hi.
Neri. Okay, in any case,
Yes,
Neri,
that's correct.
what do you see happening? Because I have to move to the next gap. But
Yeah.
what do you see happening here? Because the president certified it as urgent. It seems the Senate has its own version. But although Jericho Nograles shared with us earlier that chances are the Senate version is what's going to prevail. Are you happy with that?
No, because the Senate version is the ones I'm citing is the Senate version that they adopted. So for me, the move now is for the Congress, the House, not to approve the bill, and for the senators to take back their approved bill. One of the rare moments, Cito, when the senators passed a draconian measure ahead of the House. So I guess that's the problem. I mean, there are many bills, Cito. For example, there is a bill there increasing pension. Why don't you focus on that? There is a bill there that takes out the mandatory PhilHealth premiums for OFW. Why don't you focus on that? Why don't they file a bill that will realign the Malampaya Fund, which is Cito, by the way, according to the National Expenditures Program of President Duterte, amounts to 275 billion pesos. Why do you have to keep that Malampaya Fund somewhere hidden? Why don't you realign it? A bill would be helpful under in the pandemic situation. I mean,
Okay.
$275 billion, they don't need a Bayanihan law. But they passed the anti-terror bill, which has no relations at all to the COVID pandemic.
Okay, well, I think you've said more than enough, more than we expected, but I will call on you again because all those other priorities, bigger priorities, such as the issue with the Malampaya Sound, is something we want to tackle because apparently someone wants to sell his share back to the government. But thank you, Neri, and
Thank you.
we'll discuss these topics. Please stay safe, stay strong, stay healthy, and God bless you.
Thank you. God bless.
Okay, that's former congressman and now chairman of Bayan Muna, Neri Colmenares, who's basically made it very clear what problems we could encounter with this new anti-terrorism bill. Now, let's move on to an update because my concern right now is what's going on with our employees, laborers, workers who went through the first day of work yesterday. We have with us one of the news correspondents of TV5. He monitored yesterday's traffic situation along EDSA, Gerard de la Peña. Looking good, my friend. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Cito. How are you?
Fine. Trying to stretch my body out. Medyo pagod-pagod. Pero alam mo, yung nakita ko kahapon, awang-awa ako. I felt so bad for those employees, for those workers. Could you please let us know what exactly you witnessed yesterday?
Okay, so I've seen a lot of people having a hard time going to work because there's practically walang public transport kahapon. Only the MRT and some P2P buses were available along EDSA. So basically MRT lang talaga, and then limited pa yung capacity niya. The original capacity is around 1,000 passengers per trip, but they only accommodated about 100 or 200 because of social distancing. And also they have to observe social distancing when they line up at the stairs, when they lined up at the platform. So it was kind of difficult for our commuters yesterday. A lot of passengers were also confused because they thought buses will start serving passengers starting yesterday, but they were wrong. We don't have the regular city buses as of yet. The DOTR is planning to bring back the bus service starting on June 21. And as of now, we only have the P2P buses serving the passengers in some select routes, Cito.
Okay, now so what is your analysis? Because you know you have contacts with the DOTR, etc. And I'm about to launch into an editorial about what happened yesterday, because here's the feedback from a lot of people. They were questioning, was this intentional or was this disaster a result of incompetence? I don't want to be critical of government at this point because I don't envy their situation. Pero sinadya ba talaga na konti lang muna? What could have been done better?
Well, I have actually a lot of thoughts about that, Cito.
Go
With
ahead, please share them.
Yeah, with regards to the question na sinadya, yes, sinasadya ng DOTR na kokonti lang yung mga sakyan. As I was talking to Assistant Secretary Mark De Leon yesterday, and he said that if they open the tap, so to speak, Filipinos tend to, to crowd up, to gobble up the opportunity, so to speak, ganyan. So kung bubuksan nila all at once lahat ng modes of public transportation, it's gonna be disaster, and we are up for greater risk of contracting coronavirus. Yung isa ko pang thoughts naman dito, I also hear a lot of people saying na walang plano ang government. Itong nangyayaring disaster sa atin shows the incompetence and lack of foresight or lack of plan of the government. Well, hindi naman ako nakikisympathize talaga sa DOTR, pero nakita ko naman na maraming plan. Actually, bawat administrasyon meron namang plano kung ano yung gusto nilang gawin sa transportasyon. Each administration has its own transportation roadmap. Maganda ang roadmap ng transportation under Secretary Tugades leadership. It's just that our transportation problems are so complex. Hindi kakayanin ng isang tao lang, ng isang administrasyon lang. Siguro ang naging lapse lang dito is yung execution. It could have been done better siguro. Day one pa lang naman yesterday, and I think the DOTR is trying to fix the problem in the coming days. Like for today, they open up 2 new bus routes to service the commuters along Commonwealth Avenue and also the commuters coming from Cavite. So we'll see how it pans out in the coming days.
What about tricycles? Because I understand in some places like in Manila, the police officers basically decided to let the tricycles ferry passengers because there was just really no other solution. And you know, Commonwealth, I was just thinking, if we allow the tricycles with social distancing, plastic screening, to just go from point to point along Commonwealth and along other stretches, we would be giving back jobs to all of these tricycle drivers, but we would partially also be solving the problem until we can get the bus. Because, I mean, okay, we can't use the bus and the trains because of social distancing, but we are not tapping or making use of those tricycles na nakatanga o nakatiwangwang. What's the feedback on that?
Well, the operations of tricycles are really up to each LGU. It's not under the DOTR. As we have noticed naman nung simula pa lang nitong quarantine, Pasig City government is really keen on having this to be operated nga kasi of course livelihood and of course as a means of transportation for people, especially the elderly, the PWDs and and other sectors of the society. So I think it would be a good move if they allow tricycles to operate. But of course, social distancing should be strictly observed.
Yeah, well, in any case, last question, Gerard. Do you have any idea up to how long this very regulated flow of public transport is going to be? Because a lot of people are asking, is it worth my time to walk 2-3 hours one way and walk 2-3 hours returning home? Kung ganyan lang, baka mabuti pang mangutang na lang ako at magtipid ng husto.
Well, the idea really here is to discourage people still to go out, even if we are already under GCQ. So the DOTR is doing this in phases. So phase 1 is just the MRT, the P2P buses, and then phase 2 on June 21, it's the UV Express, the modern jeepneys, and the city buses. But I think ang common denominator dito, Cito, is from yesterday up to maybe the end of June, it's still gonna be difficult for commuters to go around Metro Manila. So go out at your own risk, take the necessary precautions, and of course, ingat lagi sa paglalakad at sa pagsakay sa mga pampublikong transportasyon.
You could not have said it any better. Go out at your own risk and also your own inconvenience. Okay, Gerard, thank you very much. Please stay safe, stay strong, and stay healthy. And God bless you, bro.
You too. Thank you and God bless.
Okay, that's our news correspondent from News 5, Gerard de la Peña. We'll go for a quick break, and when we return, we will then tackle this issue about tuition fees in private schools, because a lot of parents are complaining. Why are we being charged the full amount? Why are we being charged higher amounts? Why are we being required to pay in person, enroll in person, and everything is supposed to be online and cheaper? We will interview a congressman from Mindanao, and we will find out his sentiments because he's pushing for a different scenario. Here on Agenda, we'll be back after a break. Okay, we're back here on Agenda, and you are watching us on channels 8 and 250 of Signal TV and the One News platform on Facebook as well as YouTube. As we wait to connect with our next guest, it's interesting what we heard from Gerard de la Peña that it is likely that the inconvenience, the discomfort, and the lack of transport in Metro Manila will persist up to the end of June at the shortest. In any case, we will pursue that topic along the way. And for now, let's go to our guest. He was the former Speaker of the House and now currently representative of the First District of Davao del Norte, Congressman Pantaleon Bebot Alvarez. Good morning, Kong.
Hi, Cito. Good morning and good morning, Philippines.
Okay, how are you doing? I hope I didn't rouse you out of bed. Alam ko marami sa inyo napupuyat ngayon dahil sa Netflix eh.
Hindi naman. Maaga tayo natutulog. Nasa probinsya lang.
Okay. In any case, Congressman, I picked up your press release yesterday where you basically raised the issue of tuition fees and charges from private schools. Maraming mga magulang kahit dito sa Metro Manila ang umaangal kasi bakit gano'n na mataas? Bakit walang bawas kahit online naman at walang actual face-to-face schooling? Could you please share your thoughts regarding that statement you issued yesterday? Okay, we have a delay. Okay, I think we have a delay because if I understand it, Congress... Oh, there we go.
Cito. Kasi alam naman natin lahat na naghihirap talaga, apektado, no? Kahit na yung mga magulang na yung mga anak ay nasa Lasal, Ateneo, ay apektado pa rin. Kaya sabi ko, kailangan i-rationalize natin.
Okay, we're going to have to drop that connection and go to Congressman Alvarez by telephone or by mobile phone. We will just need a few minutes to do so. But I believe, based on his statement yesterday, the congressman was questioning why the private schools are allowed to charge the usual rate, if not higher, during this time of pandemic, given that they are doing their classes, their lessons via online and not face-to-face education, and there are no need for physical facilities, etc. And the thing about that is the congressman or Congressman Bebot Alvarez is not alone in that complaint. I have seen quite a number of complaints on Facebook, on social media, and in general, just hearing from people who have raised the same issue. Now, the question there is who's going to make the private schools change their tack? Anyway, we're going to do a second shot with Congressman Bebot Alvarez. Sir, you back there? Okay. I think we have a serious delay. we have a serious delay. Maybe we'll just try to get him via phone. But in any case, we are going to pursue this matter because here's the deal. When it comes to public schools, the DepEd is in charge. But when it comes to private schools, it's like anybody's guess. I don't know. I've been in media for quite some time, but that's one of those things that remain unclear. Anyway, I've been asked to go for a gap, for a break, but and then we will see what happens with our connections. Don't go away. Please stay with us. Okay, you're back here on Agenda, and we are doing our best to connect with Congressman Bebot Alvarez because we need that. And now we're going to take a shot online on the phone. Congressman, are you there?
Yes, Cito.
Okay. Can you just give us your thoughts regarding this issue about tuition fees and the complaints of many parents, as well as such as yourself, Congressman?
Yes, kagaya ng sinabi ko kanina dito, itong panahon na ito ngayon, no, lahat talaga apektado. Kahit pa ikaw ay magulang na yung mga anak mo ay pinag-aaral mo sa Lasal, sa Ateneo, at sa ibang mga exclusive schools, no, apektado pa rin. Walang hanap buhay ngayon na hindi apektado. Kaya ang sa akin sana, nananawagan ako sa DepEd, nananawagan ako sa mga private schools, na sana i-rationalize natin yung mga charges. Kasi yung ibang eskwelahan dyan, ang dami. May mga energy charge, may mga technology charge, kung ano-ano, yung mga nakapatong doon sa pinabayaran ng mga magulang. Ngayon, dahil nga ay online natin i-conduct yung mga classes, no, mostly, malaki ang matitipid ng mga eskwelahan. Halimbawa, yung kuryente, electricity, hindi na ganun kalaki yung babayaran nila. Water charges, hindi na ganun kalaki yung babayaran nila. Yung mga operating cost nila ay definitely bababa. So sana, ibaba rin nila yung mga tuition fees upang sa ganun ay makapag-save naman yung mga magulang at ito ay magagamit nila unang-una pag halimbawa kailangan ng mga magpapakonect sila ng internet sa bahay dahil yun nga yung pamamaraan para sa pag-aaral ng mga bata. No? Hindi naman lahat ng bahay kasi may mga internet. So mapipilitan yung mga magulang na magpapakabit ng mga internet. Tapos yung mga kinakailangan bilhin para ikaw ay makakapag-participate doon sa online classes. So ang dami po pwedeng ma-save ng magulang at meron pa silang pambili ng pagkain, medisina at iba pa.
Okay, first issue, Congressman, paano ba ang gagawin natin? Kasi ako, alam ko na pagdating sa public school, DepEd ang authority. Sila ang nangangasiwa sa public school. Pagdating sa private school, parang, I don't know, I have to confess my ignorance. I don't really know of a government office or authority that supervises private schools, lower private schools from primary, secondary. Meron tayong CHED, pero yung CHED is more of pursuing the curriculum than the cost. What can be done about that situation?
We have to re-examine the charter ng DepEd, kung wala ba silang regulatory power over itong mga private schools dito sa babang aside from colleges. Ngayon, pag wala naman, kaya nga sabi ko ito ay nananawagan din ako sa mga private schools na sana ay yung makonsensya naman tayo dahil lahat naman tayo nandito sa sitwasyon na talagang mahirap. At siguro naman pwede rin pumasok yung gobyerno in the exercise of yung regulatory powers ng gobyerno.
Are you planning to file a bill or law in Congress to this effect? Kasi kakausap ko pa lang kanina yung kaprobinsya mo o ka-region mo na si Jericho, Nograles. And it seems that Malacanang has certified the Anti-Terrorism Bill as urgent. And I think in the minds of many such as yourself and me and all the parents out there, I think a more urgent bill would be a bill regulating tuition fees and charges and regulating private schools so that they would also have some form of financial accountability like with the DepEd.
Actually, ito ginagawa na ng staff ko yung draft ng bill. So we started yesterday. So hopefully pagka madaliin yon, baka by today or tomorrow pwede namin matapos yung bill. Pwede namin i-file yun, then we will communicate with Malacanang. Baka pwedeng certify nila as urgent. Dahil nga kawawa naman yung mga magulang.
Okay. My other concern would be, syempre, we have to be fair to the private schools. They are running a business, not just a vocation, but a business. And many of them won't be making the profit margins that kept them running through the years. Some of them would be saying, yung business continuity namin is at risk, yung sustainability namin is at risk. Would there be anything in your proposed bill that would cut taxes for educational institutions such as private schools in the context of the pandemic and reduced tuition fees, Congressman?
Hindi na kailangan siguro dito, kasi kung halimbawa bababa naman yung tuition fee, so definitely bababa din yung income nila, di ba? So bababa din yung income taxes na babayaran nila. So hindi na talaga kailangan. At atin lang dito, ngayong panahon na ito, kailangan talaga magtulungan tayo. Nasa private sector ka man, nasa public sector ka man, o kung saan sekta ka, o rebelde ka man, ay magtulungan tayo dahil buong mundo yung ito yung problema eh.
Mhm.
Kailangan natin mag-survive dito sa problemang ito.
Okay. We will wait for your proposed bill to go in front of Congress in Malacanang. Maiba naman ako, Congressman. Nasaan ba kayo ngayon? Are you in Davao or are you in Siargao? Where are you in Mindanao right now?
Well, sa ngayon, Cito, nandito ako sa Jericho, nasa probinsya, no? At I'm shuffling from Davao del Norte to Siargao, ganyan, kasi kailangan ko rin yung sea breeze, no, para dun sa anak ko na 1-year-old. Kinakailangan kasing medyo sariwa yung hangin na na ng bata.
Kamusta naman po ang situation sa Mindanao in terms of the impact of COVID and your constituents?
Well, yung nararamdaman ng mga probinsya sa iba't ibang sa ating bansa, iba't ibang probinsya ay amin ding nararamdaman. Ang maganda lang dito dahil nga we manage na maging zero COVID kami, COVID positive, no, yung probinsya ng Davao del Norte. At so far naman yung region ng Caraga ay zero din sa COVID positive. Kanya talagang mahigpit namin pinatutupad yung mga measures na maiwasan natin na makontaminate tayo nitong pandemic na ito.
Nagkaroon na ba kayo ng pagkakataon na makipagkita kay President Duterte because I understand bumalik siya sa Davao over the weekend and he will also be looking into the situation in Mindanao?
Wala pa ito dahil limitado din yung kinikita ng ating Pangulo dahil nga siyempre considering yung pareho naman tayong senior citizen at sinasabi nga na mas madali tayong mapasukan ng virus.
What is your concern about that, Congressman? Kasi marami na ring senior citizen ang nagpapasabi sa akin na marami sa kanila nawalan ng trabaho o hindi makatrabaho simply because of their age. Mabuti nga yung kasama namin kaibigan ko si Mike Enriquez. Sila nakabalik na sila sa programming nila sa Channel 7. Pero may mga artista, may mga executives na nagsasabing parang illogical yung nangyari, dinadaan sa age at hindi sa wealth ay sa health. And then there's also this new thought now na nagsasabing maybe we should restudy this senior citizen age na imbis na 60 dapat gayahin na yung suggestion sa ibang bansa na dapat 70 na.
Well, sa totoo lang dito, hindi naman lahat ng senior citizen ay mahina na. May mga senior citizen na malakas pa rin kahit na nag-iit ng 60, 70, 80. May mga senior citizen na 80 years old. Nakakabuntis pa eh. So, natin, hindi pa rin pareho eh. Meron namang iba, mahigit na 50, pero mahina yung katawan. So, hindi talaga po pwedeng sabihin natin na pagka senior ka na, ay mahina na yung katawan mo.
Are you thinking of proposing a correction of the IATF on this one? Kasi parang urong-sulong sila. Pag may pumalag, ibibigay. Pag wala nang pumapalag, babawiin na naman.
Yun nga, siguro kailangan lang natin talaga yung consistency sa politiya natin para hindi nalilito yung mga tao.
Well, in any case, Congressman, thank you very much for your time this morning. At least our listeners na didinig ng mga nanonood na mayroong isang congressman na gagawa ng paraan na maituwid o maisaayos itong bagay tungkol sa matrikula or tuition fees. Thank you, Congressman Bebot Alvarez. Please stay safe, stay strong, and stay healthy. And God bless you.
Ay, maraming salamat din dito sa pagkakataon at sana ay makinig natin o pagbigyan tayo ng mga kinaukulan. Maraming salamat at God bless.
Okay, that's Congressman Pantaleon Bebot Alvarez, former Speaker of the House and currently the 1st District Representative of Davao del Norte, who has a 1-year-old child, and so he's not really thinking of something that would be personally beneficial, but clearly because he is going around, he goes between Davao del Norte and Siargao, and malikot siyang mamang yan, maraming pinupuntahan yan, and marami siyang napipick up, particularly the complaints and laments of parents. In any case, naka-boundary po na po tayo, and we have covered quite a number of topics. We do hope that the government, the legislators would understand what to prioritize, what to address, because a lot of people's lives, welfare are on the line, and we should not play God. We hope that you would pray for God's wisdom instead and for God's patience and perseverance. Thank you for joining us here on Agenda. I'm Cito Beltran. God bless all of you.